McKenzie, and I am the chair of the Historic Conservation Board. I would like to take a minute to remind everyone about the rules of this proceeding. This proceeding is at all times governed by the rules of procedure adopted by the board on September 26, 2011, last amended on March 9th, 2020. A copy of the rules of procedure is available for review in the back of the room and online. All those planning to testify today, which does not include those solely making arguments such as attorneys, should please stand now and take an oath administered by the board's attorney.
Everyone will raise their right hand. You solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
This is a quasi-judicial hearing. As such, the board reserves the right to deliberate in private. The Ohio Rules of Evidence do not apply to this hearing. However, professional rules of conduct do apply, and candor to the tribunal is required. The board members are citizen volunteers and are not paid for their service. They are treated as public officials under Ohio law. Any attempt to influence them, including but not limited to bribery, intimidation, retaliation, which may include contacting their employer in an attempt to exert influence, is punishable as a crime. All should be aware that this meeting is being recorded. Therefore, before you begin your comments, please state your name and address for the record. With that said, let's proceed with the first item. Just a procedural note before we start, I need to leave at 4:40. So in the case that this is still going on, Mr. Young will take over as chair at that point. So, okay.
Madam Chair, we have 4 consent items.
We do.
None of which I am here to object to, but I did have a quick question for staff. And it goes to how something gets from the discussion to the consent docket. I mean, for example, density questions are ones we've wrestled with a great deal here. And does the fact that somebody's applying for tax credits impact it? Can you give us some guideline as to how that distinction is made?
So we don't have an official policy as to what items can be placed on consent and what would be discussion. So it's really kind of a discretion call for me. So typically what I try to do is, I try to use consent items fairly sparingly. So when we have heavy caseloads, sometimes I try to have more consent items, and generally what would be consent, in my opinion, would be something that is a relatively minor alteration or alterations that aren't highly visible from the street, especially when there are historic tax credits involved. The density regulations, typically if it's something that is aligned with what the board has approved in the past, then I'm more comfortable putting something like that on consent than if it were, a density that is denser than what the board has typically seen. So
thank you. I appreciate that clarity.
Are there any consent items that anyone on the board would like to move to the discussion docket?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, and I will take them one by one. So I will entertain a motion on item number 1.
Motion to approve as recommended by staff.
Second.
I will call the roll. Mr. Zalesko?
Aye.
Mr. Sunderman?
Aye.
Ms. Dobbins?
Aye.
Mr. Voss?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Thank you. That item is approved. Item number 2, is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the certificate of appropriateness and zoning request as laid out by staff.
Second.
Call the roll. Mr. Zalesko?
Aye.
Mr. Sunderman?
Aye.
Ms. Dobbins?
Aye.
Mr. Voss?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Item number 3, is there a motion?
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we accept both the zoning relief and the certificate of appropriateness as laid out by staff.
Second.
The roll. Mr. Zalesko?
Aye.
Mr. Sunderman?
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins?
Aye.
Mr. Voss?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. That one is approved. Is there a motion on item number 4?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the certificate of appropriateness and zoning relief for TOE East 13th Street as laid out by staff.
And second.
The roll. Mr. Zalesko?
Aye.
Mr. Sunderman?
Aye.
Ms. Smith Dobbins?
Aye.
Mr. Voss?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you. That's the end of the consent docket, and we will move on to item number 5, the first of the discussion. Yes, sir?
Question, I don't have the docket in front of me, so those first three, can we know the addresses of those properties, so I know if those were,
Item number 1 is 1118 Sycamore. Item number 2 is 131 West Elder. That was item number 2. Item number 3 is 129 West Elder. Item number 4 was 208 East 13th Street.
I'll also say for everyone's, knowledge, there's a sheet in the very back on the table there that has the agenda with a list of all the cases.
thank you.
Mr. Owen, item number 5.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 5 is an application for zoning relief and a certificate of appropriateness for 1430 Central Parkway. In the Over the Rhine Historic District, this is also known as the Pitch Cincy. It is across the street from the TQL Stadium. The applicant is requesting conditional use to allow an outdoor area exceeding 50% of the indoor area and a locational variance to allow an accessory structure in the side yard. So this has been before the board previously. It was originally approved in 2021, I believe, to allow this use on the property. And at that point in time, there was a condition placed on the approval that it would expire at the end of 2023. So the expectation at that point was there was a hotel development under consideration that would be adjoined to this property and would take up the space of the outdoor area on this site. So it wasn't expected that they would need to be in operation after December 31st, 2023. So the development of the hotel has not yet occurred. That was also approved by the Historic Conservation Board. But it is still under development, so no ground has been broken to start the construction of that hotel. And as such, the applicants for the pitch would like to extend the approvals that were previously granted to allow them to continue operations as they currently are until that hotel actually does start construction. So the zoning relief that's requested is the same that was previously granted by the board with that condition for the expiration in 2023. And the only change to the application is they're also asking for approval of a COA and the zoning relief for the construction of the turf field within that previously approved outdoor area. So that has already been constructed, but they did not get approval for that previously, so they are now asking for that. So the applicant has requested that all the original conditions that were placed on the approval be continued. They do intend to comply with all of the original conditions, of which there were quite a few, and those conditions were worked out in agreement between neighboring property owners and the owner of the Pitch Cincy. So the applicant has agreed to continue to abide by the original conditions. I have requested some modifications to those in my recommendation based on the current conditions on the site. Most of those conditions have been met at this point. So essentially, as I said, they plan to continue operating as they have done under their original approval, which while the condition said it expired on December 31st, 2023, that has been extended to October 5th, 2024, based on litigation that was ongoing surrounding the site and the hotel, that they were unable to begin that when they originally planned. So that was extended by the law department based on that litigation. So they are still currently in conformance. But in the event that the hotel does not begin construction by October, they would like to continue beyond that point until the hotel does begin. So there were some violations of the conditions early on during the Pitch's occupancy of the site, mainly related to one or two events that occurred within the outdoor area that involved a DJ playing music outdoors, which was not permitted based on the previous approval. There were violations from neighbor complaints that were entered into the system, and the Department of Buildings and Inspections and the zoning staff worked with the owners to explain, what those violations were, and the owner has worked to correct that. We have not had any substantial noise complaints since they had worked with staff to make sure that that wouldn't happen again. So at this point, they are recommending the conditional use approval to continue that outdoor area. The main changes to the previous conditions I have listed in the staff report and highlighted those in yellow, which basically eliminates the December 31st, 2023 date to be until construction begins on the proposed hotel on the site. And then another area of contention was the outdoor area, the size of the outdoor area that was specifically granted. There is a small area in the back corner of the property, which you can see on the site. It is marked by the cones and the wire fence. The previous approval allowed the outdoor area to operate within the footprint of the building that was demolished on this site. So that did not occur initially. That entire outdoor area was used based on those early violations. So since that point, the owner had worked with the inspections department to delineate the specific area that could not be used, which was marked off with these cones. So that currently is slightly barricaded to prevent people from gathering in that area. So staff would recommend, based on the previous condition, that still apply, and we would recommend that condition be modified so that the area outside the footprint of the building should be clearly delineated with barriers such as fencing or planters or other similar structures to be approved by staff, rather than the cones and the wire that are currently there. The dedicated parking space in front of the pitch Cincy on Central Parkway on condition 11, that has been acquired by the owner. It has been signed by the Department of Transportation as a loading area. So we would recommend that condition be changed to maintain the dedicated delivery parking space. And then we would also add a qualifier on there that unless it is requested to be removed by the City of Cincinnati Department of Transportation and Engineering related to other priorities they have in that area. And then on condition 15, the gates on West 15th Street were intended to be used only for food trucks entering and exiting that area, emergency exiting, and ADA access. The operator currently also uses those gates for trash collection. That is where they roll the refuse storage out to the street so that it can be collected by Rumpke. So we would like to add trash collection as part of the permitted uses of those gates. And then finally, we added a new condition as number 16. And this is related to the front of the establishment along Central Parkway. You can see in the images on the screen here, the original COA had proposed a black metal fence along this frontage that would match the black metal fence that is further off to the north. That black metal fence was never actually installed. It is still the chain link fence at that location. Understanding that the hotel is likely to still be built at this point, I don't know that it makes a lot of sense to install the black metal fence if the hotel will be built in the next several months. So we would like to add a condition that the originally proposed black metal fence along Central Parkway shall be installed if the building permits for the hotel are not applied for by October 5th, 2024. That is when the original expiration would have occurred, so staff feels that it's reasonable that if the hotel has not begun by that point, that the black metal fence be installed. So, if for some reason the hotel is never built, then at least the black metal fence would still be established along that frontage. So the other item of zoning relief is related to the accessory structure, which is the turf field that is located within that outdoor area. And staff does feel that that is generally appropriate in this area. It is set back from the front facade, so it's not highly visible when you're passing by on the street. If the hotel does not happen, it would be further screened by that black metal fence that would be installed along the frontage. And furthermore, the turf field actually reduces the occupancy of the outdoor area because it is only used when there are games scheduled to be played on that turf. So when there are no games occurring, patrons of the bar are not allowed to gather on the turf field. So it is just not used, and the outdoor area is further limited to the area in the front and the rear of the turf field. So, so that is staff's recommendation. We do recommend approval of the conditional use for the outdoor area exceeding 50% of the interior space. And we do recommend approval of the locational variance of the turf field in the side yard. So that is based on the conditions that are included in the staff report, which I am not going to read through all of those 16 conditions.
Thank you. We do have two people signed up for this case, although I believe one of them may have actually been for item number 1. We'll come to that in a moment. It does look like we have an attorney signed up for the case. Ms. Holly, would you like to add anything?
I apologize. I misunderstood the numbering. I'm not affiliated with this case.
Okay.
Apologies.
Actually, but I am, and I may have also misunderstood.
Okay, are you a representative for the owner
Yeah,
or attorney?
the owner,
Okay, yes, please come forward. Would
Thank
you
you.
like to add anything? Yep.
Now, my name is Jeff Forbes. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Wood and Lamping at 600 Vine Street downtown. I'm here in place of attorney Kathy Ryan. She's been handling this matter. Really don't have anything other to add, except we've seen the staff report and recommendation. The owners are fully willing to comply with all of those. The owner is here and can testify to that on the record if the board would like.
Would the owner like to add anything at this time or just be here to answer questions?
We're satisfied with the report.
Okay, are there any questions or comments from the board for either the applicants, their attorney, or staff?
I do, Madam Chair. The field, while its use would have less occupancy, there's nothing written that says they just can't all pile out on that field when they're not playing. Is that correct?
Correct.
So we're
It's my
relying on
understanding
that.
that's a policy of the eating and drinking establishment on the site.
So we're relying on their.
Correct, but, and, if that ended up being utilized for bar patrons, then, it would be back to being the same size that was originally
Okay.
approved.
And I just have 3 here. So number 2 is, you feel that was an honest mistake that they missed, in your opinion, construction of the field? Didn't
Well,
apply for a building permit?
in full disclosure, I did have a conversation with the architect before, with an architect before the field was installed, and I did let them know at that point that it would require a building permit and a COA.
But they
Did not
did not.
apply.
So that leads me to my next question is, in your opinion, and I recognize it's your opinion, but you've been discussing with the owner, do you feel these were willful violations that they've had, or the sound and that kind of thing, or have they agreed to all the conditions in your staff report?
I mean, they've agreed to all the conditions in the current staff report as well as the previous staff report. You know, I can't speak to their intent as to the initial violations, but, you know, as I mentioned earlier, it was very limited time period for that violation. It was mainly related to one special event that was being held at the establishment where they had a DJ who was positioned up on the deck that was playing music outdoors.
And no violations since then.
Correct.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions?
I have a question. Is there any idea when a hotel will be going up?
Not that I'm aware of.
We can't really answer that. The owners of the hotel and the owners of the pitch property are separate entities, so we can't speak to that. I don't know if you have any.
No, I don't.
So I'm sorry, so you're the owner of.
I'm one of the
owners of
owners,
Pitch?
Yep.
And then you'll be a tenant in the new development?
No. That space is gonna be taken by the
It'll be
hotel.
separate?
Yes.
Okay,
We're just using it until the hotel is built.
thank you.
I think what you're getting at, Mr. Dobbins, that I also have some questions. You know, obviously, it seems like the hotel might be built, but it seems like this might potentially be extending a temporary conditional use to a permanent one if something were to fall through with the hotel.
I just always assumed that this is a package deal, and when one went up, the outdoor, the hotel was just gonna be the next thing that happened. And I'm really surprised that it's not there. Every time I drive by, it's kind of bothersome.
So in lieu of the hotel construction, does this just continue in with the fence being constructed in perpetuity, or is there an expiration date?
Correct. There would be no expiration if the hotel was never built.
And Mr. Owens, and as I recall, we actually voted down the hotel and council overrode us. Is that, do I remember that correctly?
No, there were several iterations of the hotel design. The board did vote it down.
For demolition. We voted down the demolition.
Correct. The board denied the demolition. That was overturned by ZBA, I believe, which is what led to the lawsuits that delayed the implementation. Ultimately, that was resolved to allow the building to be demolished, which paved the way for the new hotel construction, which was presented to the board multiple times. They took into account the board's feedback on the design considerations and ultimately did get approval from
You
the
did approve it the last time. I remember now. Yeah, thank you.
I'm a little surprised. In our packet, we got some letters from some of the residents complaining about noise and things like this. And one of the things was when we passed this originally, one of the stipulations was you couldn't blast music out into that open area. And apparently that's done on a regular basis. Now, that's what I read in the packet, and I'm a little surprised. You're representing the residents, is that correct?
No, I represent the owner.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it says no speakers or amplified music, maybe.
And if
Yeah, I guess I'm a little surprised there's nobody here to represent the residents.
So we actually only had one letter of opposition in this round. There was, significant opposition the first time around. But I think, for whatever reason, for this latest round, we only had one letter of opposition from
Okay.
a neighbor. And I think that there may be some confusion about what exactly that directing music means. So from a zoning code standpoint, outdoor entertainment is considered to be music that is played outdoors, or if a speaker was set up in the opening and directed, directly outdoors, that would also be a violation. But, playing music indoors and having those garage doors open itself is not a violation because it's not intentionally trying to push that music outside. It's just, the doors are open because it's a nice day and that music can obviously be heard from outside as well.
I'm actually, as I read this, I was of the mind to be very encouraged because we do so many things with the assumption that there will be some back check to make sure that what we said, yeah, you can do this, is actually what is done. I think the system worked in a way that reinforces my general belief that, okay, we can say okay to something and know that if it's really adversely impacting people, it's going to be dealt with. So that was my takeaway from this.
Other questions or comments for the applicants or staff? I don't believe we have anyone else signed up on this case, but I want to check because I know there was some confusion on numbering. Is anyone else present for this case? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion on this item.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, I'll propose that we approve the extension of the conditional use with the comments provided by staff and approve the locational variance.
Second.
And also included in that move is a certificate of appropriateness.
Second.
Okay, I will call the roll. Mr. Zalesko?
Aye.
Mr. Sunderman?
Aye.
Ms. McDobbins?
Aye.
Mr. Ross?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
The chair votes no, but the case passes, so
Thank
you
you.
got it.
Thank you, guys.
Item number 6.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 6 is an application for a certificate of appropriateness for 1104 Dayton Street. This is in the Dayton Street Historic District, and the applicant is proposing a rear deck and fence on the property. This is a through lot between Dayton Street and Garden Street on the north. So technically, the proposed deck and fence does have street frontage on a primary street, which would be Garden Street to the north. However, it should be noted that Garden Street in this area is primarily treated more as an alley than a full street. The majority, all of the buildings along Dayton Street within this block have the rear of their buildings fronting on Garden Street with detached garages, parking pads, fences, and similar accessory structures and uses. And Garden Street on the north side, there are a couple of buildings that front south on Garden Street, but they're further down the street and not exactly in this location. So it does need board approval because it is a deck that is visible from the street, but it is a relatively small scale deck. This is an attached row house, so the applicant is proposing to build the deck along the rear of his half of the building. And that would include a screen wall attached to the deck along that side property line, as well as a 6-foot wood privacy fence going along the rest of that sideline and gates to access the rear parking area along Garden Street. The renderings that are provided show a pretty good view of what that would look like. It's going to be contemporary but compatible in nature with the horizontal wood privacy fencing, metal rails and railings, and just composite decking material as the deck base. It will be wood construction for the rest of that structure. So staff feels that based on the use of Garden Street in the vicinity, that this is an appropriate treatment and it will not detract from the historic nature of the area when viewed from this area. So staff does recommend the Historic Conservation Board take the following actions based on the undated plans by Gabriel Everson submitted with this application, and approve a certificate of appropriateness for 1104 Dayton Street, including the revisions submitted for permits subject to staff review and approval with the condition that the building permits must be issued within 2 years of the decision date or the COA shall expire.
Thank you. We do have two people signed up for this case. Mr. Everson, I believe you are the applicant. If there's anything you'd like to add, now would be the time. Is this Mr. DeHart as well?
Mr. Dart is here. I'm Gabriel Emerson. I'm the contractor. I applied for the permit and my address is 4068 Fry Street, Melbourne, Kentucky. Is that all I'm supposed to say? I don't have too much to add. It's a pretty simple project and the street on that side is pretty dilapidated and I think it will help improve that side of the street. Right now, there's a chain link fence in the area where the where we want to put our wood fence, so we'll have to speak with we may put our fence just next to it, or we may talk to them about demolishing that. That's the only thing that we have to deal with the neighbors. The neighboring building is rented out, so we'd be talking to owners who don't even live there for that. But as long as that's the only foreseeable issue I could see with people in the area, and if nobody's complained, I don't really have much to add except we'd like to build it. So thank you.
Mr. DeHart, is there anything you would like to add?
Tim DeHart, 1144 Main Street. Just that I think it's gonna add a lot of value to the house and to the neighborhood.
Are there any questions or comments?
I have a comment. I love that little building. Is it occupied now?
Yes.
So I'm glad you guys, and I have no problem with the addition. I do have a question though for Mr. Owen. Are those metal steps out front? Do you know anything about those? Are those original?
I'm not sure off the top of my head. I wasn't concentrating much on the.
I realize.
The building.
I'm just curious if you ran across it or not.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I could probably answer that. I've worked on those a little bit. The framework of the steps on the front is metal and as is the railing, but the treads themselves are wood.
Okay.
With the bottom two steps being stone. And I think that they
It's the
are.
riser part that's metal.
Yeah, the riser part is metal, but the treads have been replaced. I think it is original because it is very old ironwork.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I don't believe we have anyone else signed up for this case, but just double checking. Okay, with no one else, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness as laid out by staff.
Second.
The roll, Mr. Zalasko,
Aye.
Mr. Sunderman,
Aye.
Mrs. Dobbins,
Aye.
Mr. Voss,
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Congratulations, good luck with your project.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to item number 7, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 7 is an application for 464 West McMicken Avenue in the Mohawk Bellevue Historic District. This particular item was reviewed and staff report was written by Kate Meehan in our office. She's on vacation this week, so I'll be presenting the case. So this is an existing wood frame clapboard building in the West McMicken district that has been vacant and deteriorating for a long time. And the applicant is planning to renovate the building for a new single-family dwelling that will just primarily leave the existing conditions as they are on the exterior, repainting and repairing the existing wood clapboard siding. And the main alteration to the building will be the installation of a roof deck on the rear slope of the building. So this is a hipped roof building and in an L shape, and you can see on the sightline drawing, there is a penthouse proposed on the rear slope in order to access the roof deck, which will cover a portion of that rear slope. It will not extend all the way to the edge of the property, but leave that roof intact for that edge area. So when viewed from the street, there will not be any portion of this roof deck that will be highly visible. The building or the penthouse itself will be clad in a fiber cement siding that will have a similar feel to the rest of the building. And the other major change that will be noticeable will be the replacement of the windows, which are both proposed window models have been previously approved by the Historic Conservation Board as meeting the historic guidelines. So staff does not have any issues with the window replacement, and staff does feel that while the penthouse does extend fairly substantially above the existing roof line on that rear slope due to the configuration of the front portion of the roof and the building itself as it sits on the lot, it will not be visible when viewed from McMicken Avenue. So staff does not have any major concerns with the roof deck. The deck itself will be inset within the roof, taking up a portion of that attic space. So aside from the railing along the rear and that one side and the penthouse itself, there will be no further alterations to that roof line. So staff recommends the Historic Conservation Board take the following actions based on plans by Mark Gunther of Wishman Gunther Architects dated 3/12/24. Approve a certificate of appropriateness for 464 West McMicken Avenue, including revisions submitted for permit, subject to staff review and approval, with the following conditions: that the replacement windows on the front and rear of the building may be 1/1 double hung sash. If low E argon-filled gas is used, it must be clear and not have a visible tent, and that the building permits must be issued within 2 years of the decision date or the COA shall expire.
Thank you. I don't have anyone signed up, but I believe Mr. Gunther is here. If you'd like to come up, were you sworn in?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mark Gunther, Wishman Gunther Architects, 22 West 7th. Don't really have anything to add about this particular building, other than I just hope the board recognizes it. It excites me as a long-term purveyor of rehab in the Basin to see Mohawk Bellevue finally kind of within reach of kind of what is considered, acceptable buyer property geography. And as you all know, I'm sure this neighborhood has been one that's been a little rough around the edges for a long time, though, with the substantial stock of existing structures that, and there's some vacant lots up there. So adjacent to this building being one, I hope to be back before the board. Certainly been discussing some things with staff recently, and that everyone recognizes that this, being a new beginning in this location, that we all hopefully can cheer it on with your considerations. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments by the board for either the applicant or staff?
I couldn't help but notice, Madam Chair, that Mr. Owen in your report said the siding was in good condition.
Well, the wood itself is in good condition.
Down deep.
I don't believe we have anyone else signed up for this case. Double checking. Okay, with that being said, I would entertain a motion on this item.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness for 464 West McMicken Avenue as laid out by the staff.
Second.
Ms. Gillespie?
Aye.
Mr. Thunderman?
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins?
Aye.
Mr. Voss?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
And the chair also votes aye. Congratulations, good luck on the project. We'll move on to item
More.
8.
I got some.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 8 is an application for zoning relief for 1118 Sycamore Street. This is the second item on this property that has been before the board today. So in addition to the wall mural that was approved earlier as item 1, this is an application for zoning relief only. So this is a proposal to convert what was previously proposed as co-working office space on the second floor of this building into a rooming house use that would have 7 beds and shared living space and kitchen facilities. So the building itself was approved by the Historic Conservation Board previously. As I mentioned, this was co-working office space. And the owner has determined that that is not a viable use for this particular location. So they would like to convert this into a rooming house. So while a rooming house itself is a permitted use in the district, it does have a limitation that there's a required minimum stay of 7 days. So the applicant is asking for zoning relief for a variance to shorten that minimum stay period to 3 days. So generally, each bedroom within the rooming house would be able to be rented for 3-day stays rather than the 7. So they have provided the floor plans. There are 5 rooming house units altogether. 2 of the units will feature 2 bedrooms, while the rest will all be single bedroom units. So I believe it's these 2 on the corner. Each have 2 bedrooms with some shared space, and all the others are single beds. And then it has common living space in the center with kitchen facilities as well. So the proposed use does meet all the zoning code requirements aside from the 7-day minimum rental period stays. So staff feels that the variance is justified in this case as short-term rentals are generally permitted elsewhere in this district and including in this building itself. So the individual apartment units that are in the building could be rented as short-term rentals with no minimum stay periods. So staff feels that it is reasonable to request a shorter stay than the 7-day minimum required for a rooming house use. Staff recommends the board take the following actions based on plans by Arcall Architects LLC dated 1/19/2024 to approve a numerical variance for a rooming house with minimum rental periods of 3 days short of the required minimum of 7 days, with the following condition: that a rooming house license shall be obtained prior to the issuance of the certificate of, and there is no COA requested as there's no exterior work proposed.
I believe that Ms. Holly and Mr. signed up for this item. And add anything that you would like to tell us.
Thank you very much. Sophia Hawley, I'm with KMK Law. I'm at 1 East 4th Street, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45202. I'm joined here by a property manager for the applicant who, if it would be helpful, can talk about how this 3-day requirement is really what's financially needed in order for this project to go forward. And I appreciate staff's help and respectfully request approval.
Would you like to add anything now, or would you just like to answer any questions we may have?
Just answer any questions you may have. I'm Will Braille. The address is 1118 Sycamore Street, and I'm the current property manager for that location right now.
Are there any questions or comments by the board?
I had a quick question to which I'm not sure staff can really help me because we've established that some things are in the history. Why 7 days? What was the logic in that?
That I'm not sure.
Okay, now that was the extent of my curiosity on it. It's like, seems like a random number to me, but okay. That's it.
I had the same question, Tim.
Any other questions that can be answered? With that, I don't think anyone else has signed up, giving everyone just that opportunity. Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll move to approve the numerical variance for 1118 Sycamore Street, with whatever comments staff has noted.
Second.
Mr. Zalesko?
Aye.
Mr. Sunderman?
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins?
Aye.
Mr. Voss?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
The chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Motion's-
Thank you.
Item number 9.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item number 9 is an application for certificate of appropriateness and zoning relief for the property at 304 Mulberry Street, which is located in the Over the Rhine Historic District. and is also in a hillside overlay. Just a note of clarification before I begin. The adjudication letter for this property did specify that a height variance or that a hillside review for height would be needed on this property based on the preliminary plans that were submitted to my office. However, there were some minor modifications that were made prior to receiving the full application, and with the new application, the entire building does fit within that maximum building envelope, so the height variance is no longer needed. It does still require a hillside review for a rear yard setback of 6.54 feet, which is short of the required average rear yard setback of 18 feet. And it requires a hillside review for a front yard setback of 0, which is short of the required 5.5 feet based on the averaging on of the adjacent properties. And finally, a hillside review is required for the cumulative excavation and fill, which totals 11 feet, which is in excess of the 8-foot maximum specified by the hillside overlay. So this is a proposal for new infill construction. The lot is currently a vacant grassy lot. And the applicant is proposing a new single-family residence, which will be centered on the existing lot with about just over a 3-foot setback on each side, which is generally consistent with the block face on this parcel. The historic buildings on the block face have small to no side yard setbacks. Most of the new infill construction that has been built along the area has similar 3 to 5 foot setbacks. This is an interesting block because it is primarily infill construction. There are 9 other buildings, 5 of which are new infill construction and 4 are historic buildings. So the proposal is for a new 3-story single-family building that will have a 4th floor roof deck that includes a penthouse that will gain access to that roof deck. The penthouse itself is set back towards the center of the building, so it will not be highly visible from the surrounding streets. The south and west elevations are proposed to be clad primarily in brick veneer, and the east and north elevations are proposed with composite lap siding. So staff feels that the proposal does substantially conform to the Over the Rhine conservation guidelines. It does have a defined base, middle, and top, and it is within 1 story in height of adjacent buildings. It does appear shorter. It is slightly downhill from the neighboring buildings, and it does have slightly lower floor to ceiling heights. But it is still within 1 story of the adjacent buildings. The applicant did make some alterations to the rendering based on staff feedback that did not get updated on the elevation drawings. So primarily that consists of continuing the band above the first floor that was on the side elevation, as well as above the entryway. Continuing that above the garage door to provide continuity and also establish more of that definition between the base, middle, and top. And just a note that the lintels and sills are proposed to be brick rather than limestone. But they will be a differentiating color that will be similar to a stone. So those lintels and sills will still show up, so it doesn't appear as if the windows are kind of floating in the center of the building. The applicant has worked with staff for quite a while on refining the design of this building and has made some substantial alterations to get closer in line with the guidelines, to the point where staff was comfortable making the recommendation of approval. On the garage door, it is a front-facing garage door fronting on the street. Technically, the conservation guidelines do allow for garage or vehicular entries on buildings if the majority of the buildings on that block face also have vehicular entries. So all 5 of the infill construction projects on this block face do have front-facing garage doors. So while that technically allows a vehicular entry on this building, the guidelines do still say that the vehicular entry should not be on the primary street. However, staff feels that with the precedent of the street face with all the other infill constructions featuring these front-loaded garages, that it is appropriate in this instance, especially because there's no other possible way to access the site to have a side or a rear entry. There are the main street steps are on the one side of the building. And with the narrow lot size, it wouldn't be possible to have a vehicular drive that would access either the side or the rear, not to mention the constraints based on the hillside itself. So staff does feel comfortable with that recommendation of approval. The materials, staff did clarify that this will be a full width brick product, not a thin brick veneer throughout these, the front and the side elevations. That brick veneer will also wrap around the side of the building along that projecting bay so that it will, when walking down the streets, the primary sight lines will still catch that brick that wraps the corner before it transitions to the siding material. And then on the side and the rear elevations, the applicant is proposing a composite siding material, which is not something that I don't believe the board has reviewed before, or my office either. So I believe the applicant was trying to get a sample of that product to bring to the hearing today. I'm not sure if that is here. Okay, so we will have that can be reviewed by any staff members. The primary concern for staff about the siding material is related to how glossy or reflective the material may be. It does have a plastic polymer integrated into the material, but it is not a typical vinyl siding product. It's more substantial. It has a 7-inch reveal, and it is not, staff does not feel that based on the product specs that were reviewed, it would have a similar appearance to a hardy plank siding or some other fiber cement siding material. So so that will be available for inspection here to make sure that the board is satisfied with the final appearance of that. It also does, I believe, have a wood grain texture, which typically we do not want to have on composite siding materials, because that's not something that a true wood siding would have had. However, with a small wood grain texture on this material, staff is not as concerned because of its placement on the side of the building with only a few feet in between it and the other building, and on the rear of the building, which will be primarily blocked from view by excuse me, the building directly behind it, as well as the substantial grade change and the trees that are planted along that Main Street step right of way. So staff does not feel that either the side or the rear elevations are going to be highly visible on this property. So having a wood grain texture on a composite siding would not have a major effect on the area. So staff does recommend the board take the following actions based on plans by AIBD dated 10/2/2023. Approve the hillside relief for rear yard setback of 6.54 feet. Approve a hillside review for front yard setback of 0 feet. Approve a hillside review for cumulative excavation and fill totaling 11 feet. And approve the certificate of appropriateness for single-family residential building approval on Mulberry Street, with the conditions that the brick soldier course be added above the first floor per the rendering. The garage door shall be a dark color per the rendering. The brick material shall be a full width and depth and not a thin veneer product. For a sample of the composite lap siding shall be presented to the Historic Conservation Board or staff for approval prior to issuance of the building permit. And number 5, the building permits must be issued within 2 years of the decision date or the COA shall expire.
Thank you. I do have 2 people signed up for this, Mr. Holly, and I think this might be Kim Nope. If you're the owner or applicant, please come up if you would like to add anything.
Brad Halley, Autumnwood Homes, the builder, and address 640 Bear Run Lane, Lewis Center, Ohio, 43035.
I'm Kim Noppy. I'm the owner of the lot and a co-owner of Autumnwood Homes, and I live at 658 Hawthorne, Cincinnati 45205.
Is there anything that you would like to add for us?
I don't believe so. The way that on the foundation issue, I know it's being recommended that it be approved, but if you read some of the verbiage that I was able to provide, the lot slopes from front left to the back right. So the deepest excavation will be the back right. And because of the soils exploration that we had done, we are unable to do a deep excavation next to the existing building. And so we have actually put together a design for helical cores that support a grade beam at a normal footer depth. And so that situation, there shouldn't be any area in and of itself that is excavated below 8 feet. When you get around to the front, you have to add for the frost wall in the front, whatever. So that might get, if you add the back corner to the front corner, you probably have 11 feet that way. As far as the siding product, I brought a sample that you guys could take a look at. I don't know how you'd like to do that, but.
I'd like to see it.
Okay. It is actually a mineral composite, and part of the construction of it is that a rock mineral is blended in with the composite material, and according to their research, this reduces the amount of expansion in place. The installation, the product is very heavy. The installation is actually pretty substantial. There are aluminum ties at every seam, so that if there's movement, it's not going to move. It's going to move as a piece, because those ties just go through the material. They don't go into the building itself. They just tie the material together. So the seam remains almost invisible if you look at the product. And the texturing is fairly subtle, and so and the finish is pretty flat. So I believe you. It's a good product, and we've had good success with it here in town.
The only thing I'd like to add is that in October, I moved into my home on Hawthorne, which I built, and after considerable research, used this product on the sides and rear of that home. And we've also used it for the last 3 years in the winding walks in Sailor Park. And have built homes there next to homes with hardy plank on it, and this product outperforms. I wouldn't have put it on my personal residence if it wasn't the best, and it is the priciest. But with that said, the board wants the hardy board, I am more than willing to comply. So I'm not trying to cut a corner here. I'm trying to put a product on there that's going to last the test of time.
Other questions or comments?
I do have a couple of questions, Madam Chair. That's basically a PVC product, and I recognize there's some inherent issues with cement board. Has anybody else approached you, Mr. Owen, or anybody in the department about alternatives to cement board?
No, this is the first time that I've seen a product like this proposed, so it's not something that I've been very familiar with.
I mean, I like it, but I am concerned that the board's approval of it in this one instance, does that open the floodgates for everybody questioning using hardy plank or cement board in lieu of wood plank, wood siding?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know specifically. I mean, each case technically is on a case-to-case basis, but however, if there's a material that has been approved by the board previously, then that is certainly something that someone could point to
Right.
try to get approval for other projects.
Could I comment on that? It's okay, go ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna add that I think, staff's recommendation of approval on this is also very specific to the context of where it's being installed and the visibility in this case.
Which is another
So I think.
trepidation that I have, because it is such a proposed approval for a specific application of it, not just the product, but in a specific application.
And I think we can take that context moving forward, and approving it in this specific context doesn't necessarily mean that it's appropriate for all installation.
Was there still something you would like to add?
No, not at this point.
It's a new product to me. I have not seen it before. I don't do a lot of residential. I think it's clear that it's not a cheap product in the way that I think we have concerns about vinyl siding. I do have some concern over the wood grain, since we've very specifically said that is not something to do with the fiber cement, and it does have a bit of a gloss to it. So I guess those would be my only concerns with the product.
Yeah, I'm far from an expert, but I have researched it, or a similar product. And it's actually taking the place of fiber cement board, in heavy weather areas, because it does stand up very well. Again, it's PVC, so it's, I concur that I don't care for the wood grain, but that's my only objection, so.
When you step back 3 feet, you don't see the wood grain. It's not-
Understand.
It's not like raw cedar or anything, so it's,
And again, in this application, I'm not remotely concerned about it. But again, to the degree that we're setting a precedent, what you do end up with is when the light hits it right, or you're at an angle and you have a wood grain finish, it will read through. So that's just an observation as we move forward with what an up and coming line of products that we're gonna be facing in the future.
Are there any other questions or comments by the board for the applicants or staff?
I was kind of looking up at the driveway into the garage. There,
It does,
maybe this is an optical illusion.
A little bit, but it does drain to the side also. It comes out to the front away from the building and then drains to the side.
So you're kind of going down that way?
Yeah.
I don't have anyone else signed up for this case. I do see that we have a couple more people in the room, so just making sure no one else wants to speak.
I'm an intern.
That, if there are no more questions or comments, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the zoning relief and certificate of appropriateness as laid out by staff.
Second. Mr. Zlasko,
Aye.
Mr. Sunderman.
Aye.
Yes,
Sorry,
I.
that's the meeting. I'm still a little jet lagged, bear with me.
Come on.
Your boss.
With the caveat on the siding that we talked about, I vote aye.
Mr. Young,
Aye.
The chair also states that, I would like to see this type of siding in very limited applications, similar to the conditions on this specific application, but I also apply. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck. I believe that we do have staff approvals yet on the agenda. Were there any questions on those approvals? Not, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the staff level approvals.
Mr. Zalesko?
Aye.
Mr. Sunderman?
Aye.
Ms. McDobbins?
Yes, aye.
Mr. Voss?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
The chair also votes aye. Anything else for today? Okay, given that, I would entertain a motion on adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
With time to spare, we could have just kept running this out.